Welcome to the second panel discussion of Breaking the Rules series. And it's brought to you by Mojokarma and DisruptHR Hyderabad. And today we are going to discuss the new normal for employee engagement. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so others please go on mute. I am Jayashree Venkataraman, CEO and founder of Mojokarma, and which specializes in leadership training and for women who re-enter the workforce, and also founder of Appreiz, and which is a HR tech platform for employee engagement using social recognition as a theme. So this is my pet topic, you can see. And so it is my pleasure to welcome our distinguished panel, Aditya Kohli, CHRO of Clix Capital, and David Zinger, world's leading employee engagement expert, and Ramchandra, partner, Basil HR Advisory. Before I ask them to give an intro about themselves, let me take a minute to explain what Disrupt HR is about, and then I will hand it over to the panel to introduce themselves. Mojokarma brings Disrupt HR to Hyderabad, India. And what is Disrupt HR? It was formed as an information exchange designed to energize, inform, and empower the people in the HR fraternity. It's to bring the community together, and it is not only limited to the HR community, but for anybody who is interested in working with people in the work organizations and who are willing to disrupt what is the normal, so that you come up with an idea. You could be a CEO, you could be a technologist, you could be a HR person, but when you have something to disrupt about people working in the organization, then this is your forum to come and speak. So once again, welcome to our panel discussion today. And now I would like the panel to give a brief introduction about themselves, and then we will get started with our discussions for today. David, you want to go first?
Okay.
And then...
My name is David Zinger. I'm in Winnipeg, Canada. I've been involved around engagement since 1990 when William Kahn wrote an article on personal engagement. I think we made some wrong turns after that. I think it's a very, very powerful way of looking at work and our approaches to work. And I have some very definite views in that direction. And I think COVID has really disrupted HR and engagement immensely.
Thanks, David. Aditya, you go next.
Hi, Jayashree. Thank you for having me on the forum today. I'm Aditya Kohli. I'm the CHRO for a company called Clix Capital, which is a small financial services organization. I have about 20 odd years of experience in this field of HR, and it's just all over, across industries, across functions, done both business as well as HR roles. So I kind of probably bring a practitioner's view into the mix out here, and hopefully it'll be good to kind of get different perspectives out here. So very excited. I really look forward to hearing various views from the panel. So thank you for having me here.
Thanks. Ramchandra, can you give a brief intro about yourself?
Yes, thank you, Jayashree, for having me on your panel today. And hello to everyone. The name, as you can see, is Ramchandra Rao, known as Ram. I've been in HR for 40 years. I started my career in 1980 and still going strong. 32 years worked in corporate in 5 large companies. And for the last 8 years, along with 2 other colleagues running this small HR consulting firm called Basil HR. We work across the spectrum. What we like to tell our clients is to treat us as an extension of their HR department. And then we take on things that either are currently issues for the company or things that they would want to do but have not had the time or the breadth or the expertise to do it. And we work across the spectrum, and employee engagement is also an area where we've done quite a bit of work with organizations. So very happy to be here, and not only will I share my views, but I'd be actually very happy to hear from the panel and the others, and look forward to a very pleasant 1 hour with all of you.
Thank you. Thank you all panelists and all participants for being here. So we'll get started on our discussion. So if you see, the last few months have literally changed our lives in many ways. The COVID came, and right from January onwards across the world, things has changed. Overnight, organizations had to change themselves, and and HR had become one of the key people in this whole transformation which is taking place. And they were not even thought of business continuity planning, and HR has become the key role. And so there is a lot of things had to change overnight. HR policies have rewritten overnight. So given this scenario, how has employee engagement changed in the last few months? So I would like to hear from the panel. Whoever wants to go first, please go ahead and start. And I want to hear what has changed in the last few months.
All right, let me have a stab, and then we'll kind of play editor. I think the change that you talked about, Jayashree, is quite pronounced, right? There's a beautiful quote by Lenin, which says sometimes it takes decades for weeks to happen and weeks for decades of change to happen, and this is a bit similar to that. I think if anything, this pandemic has shown us that quality talent is the center of the change, right? The quality of talent that you have, maybe in the past you were okay with keeping some amount of fat, some amount of fluff within the organization, but I think now it just so stands out, right? Earlier you were looking at, from a workplace perspective, you're looking at more input parameters. How many hours does a person spend? Does he show up? Does he show up in meetings? Now that parameter has become very output oriented. How much contribution? What's the impact? How well does the person collaborate? Can he display the right amount of leaderships out there? And I think it's done two things from an engagement point of view, and maybe there are many more things, but I think there are two broad points of view. I think in one side, you're seeing a lot of companies go the old way, a tailor way of looking at the world. Productivity is people are incidental, and I see that a lot of the gig workforce has been just focused on productivity, where is required just in time, only that much. And engagement has really taken a back seat out there. And on the other hand, you have the other end of the spectrum where you are saying engagement is core to productivity. Engagement is core to how an organization succeeds in the marketplace. And I think both of these have been very prominent during this lockdown, right? We've seen both ends of the spectrum. In one end, organizations really want to put their arms around those core group of people that they think add tremendous value. And on the other hand, organization has been absolutely ruthless on driving productivity and kind of saying, hey, this is my volumetric view, and I don't need so many people. So I think this has opened up a huge Pandora box for debate. And the role of engagement really for not only HR professionals, but I think for the entire leadership team and the organization, it's opened up a lot of threads for conversation.
Okay. Yeah, I really like what you said in terms of the quote you said. It takes suddenly it takes only a few days to change the whole organization, or overnight in this case it changed. And I'd like to hear from the other panelists to add on to what Aditya has said.
Okay, let me go next. I think we are all witness to a tremendous transformation that is happening right now. I just want to say that employee engagement has always been a challenge. You know, even when you had the offices open and the water coolers working and people gossiping with each other and meeting and all that, engaging people in the true sense of the word is something that very few organizations have been able to do, right? So given that it has always been a challenge, today it is even more of a challenge because all those physical things that were supposed to, inverted commas, contribute to engagement are no longer there with you, right? So you have people scattered all over, dispersed, all alone, and eager and anxious, you know, and I say anxiety is much, much more today, you know. So therefore, getting this guy to do something which is important for you, which is meaningful to you, and then to do it very, very differently is a huge challenge. And then hoping that he is going to put his heart and soul into it and enjoy it while he's doing it is a tremendously big, big challenge. So I think even earlier, employee engagement in its narrowest sense was celebrating birthdays and anniversaries and festivals and what have you and all that. You know, it was never real or genuine concern about the person or genuine concern about the nature of the job that he is asked to perform. Does he enjoy it? Does it challenge him? Does he see growth in it? Having those conversations, bringing those issues out and addressing them, they have always been difficult things to do. Today, on a one-on-one basis, it has become even more difficult with that dose of anxiety that has crept in because of the changed environment. So as we go along, I think we will discuss and debate, and there are some solutions that are there out there, and we will talk about some of them. But in my view, the challenge was always there. It has just grown manifold because of what we have seen in the last 5-6 months or so.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very true. I think the employee engagement has become a challenge, and that's why we are discussing it. And I'm looking forward to hear from solutions from the panel and what can be done to bring down the anxiety level, especially the anxiety level among the employees, and so that they become more productive. David, your comments?
First off, I'd agree with both panelists. I think what you said, from eagerness and anxiety to talent and the challenges. I've only been to India once, and I was there for about 3 weeks, and I got back to Canada, and many of my friends said, well, what is India like? Oh, what a question. And all I could say to them is in my experience, there is no India. There are many Indias. And sometimes they're just 2 feet apart. And I see that same with how engagement is going in this pandemic. There are healthcare workers who are so engaged in saving lives and making a difference and putting in hours. There are truckers that are driving goods and services. There are people being of service to others. But there's also many, many people who didn't choose to go home, who are now working from home, trying to adapt to technology and do the best they can. Others have gone home and have fled work, and they're doing their best to avoid it. Well, others have been furloughed, have been laid off, have been let go. And the sense that they should be attached to an organization is a bit presumptuous when the organization was not attached to them. And I understand the economics, don't get me wrong. So there's been many experiences, and I've actually been quite moved by how many people have been so engaged and have made such a difference, and the role we need to do in educating people for engagement. I'll just say one other quick thing. I've worked around the world in engagement for 15 or 20 years, and I always go to employees. I want to know what they think engagement is. And many of them say, well, that's how the organization sucks work out of me. And I said, well, you're wrong, my friend. Really, engagement is your connection to your work, connection to others, connection to your organization. it's very, very important, not just for the organization, but for you and the people you work with. And I think many organizations, and I can't speak about India, I haven't been there for a long, long time, but many organizations have failed to equip people with the skills and abilities to engage in their work. Because right now, many people I know, their work is defined work, and they need that same ability to get onto tasks, to foster connections, to have a sense of positive emotions. And I think we could have done a better job. I think we could have done a much better job in the engagement field of really helping people experience that engagement, true authentic engagement, contributes to your well-being, but also to the organization. And I think what we're also seeing is to society and to cultures. That work is making a difference. And when that work isn't occurring, it's also making a difference.
Oh, good. Yeah, David, that's good to hear in terms of when you touched upon, like, you know, when the furlough employees and all that, that is adding to what others are saying about the anxiety and stuff. So at this point, engaging them is we need to do a better job of getting employees engaged. So that leads to my next question. On one hand, we all see that there is a big void in employee engagement, the way it is handled. But there are also some statistics which comes from the Gallup, and which there are some studies which said actually the employee engagement has gone up during this time. And that could be because of people are more working mode at their house, and they also have the thing of whether they're going to have a job or not, so that they are engaged mode. If that is what you call as the engagement, that it's that is a debate whether it's an engagement or productivity, as Aditya touched upon earlier also. So what's the new norm of employee engagement in when it is no longer about the water cooler areas or the perks, or like having big campuses, having the cafeterias with all international cuisines? It's not there anymore. People are working from their homes. They are working with people around them. They have their families around them. They have their kids around them. And in that case, how do you define the new norm of employee engagement? What should it be?
So I think let me go first, and then we can be edited. I genuinely believe, and I think no HR person in his right mind would believe that fancy office, comfortable chairs, all of them lead to engagement. Because if that was the case, then literally 3/4 or maybe 95% of the world would be highly disengaged, right? Because that you're talking about just a small sliver across the world workplace. I think, and maybe simplest, I have a fairly simplistic view around engagement, and that view around engagement comes from, I believe it's Gallup. I could be wrong. I read it a long time back. It's stuck in my head. I can't attribute the source to it. And somebody told me this many years back, saying, as a good manager, as a good leader, you need to look at just 4 things with your team, with your employee. One, you got to know him, right? Or her, and realistically know. It's not superficially know. You got to connect and know the person well. Second is care for the individual, and this is not a superficial care; it's a deep care. Genuine view towards the success of the person. So know me, care for me. Third is focus me, which is how do you kind of focus the person to what is required to be done, and what is the thing that he needs to do or she needs to do. And finally, inspire the individual, which is, for me, it's broader sense of purpose. Now, while Jayashree, I haven't seen that Gallup engagement survey, so I don't know the details, but I can kind of see why engagement could have gone up during this period, because there are a large number of people who found a new purpose in this entire pandemic to be able to kind of focus their attention. While I do understand a lot of people have lost jobs and a lot of people, but there are a number of people, the person who is delivering milk to your house today knows that he's doing it in a hugely adverse situation. He's going out of his way. And I suspect that that's added to the sense of purpose. So I believe, know me, care for me, focus me, inspire me are simple tenets. And as organizations put their arm around each employee, these are the simple drivers that drive engagement for the individual. And you could be in a very posh office or a sparse shed. If you had all of these, it forms deep connects and engages people around you. So in my head, the formula for engagement is relatively easy. Though it's very difficult to implement, it's relatively easy.
Oh, I'd love that. That's a very good formula, I think, and very simple. Know me, care for me, focus for me, inspire me. Great takeaway, Aditya. Thank you for that. And David or Ram, who wants to go next and say what's in your view, the new norm?
Well, I think I'll definitely and fully agree with Aditya, what you have said. See, one of the things that Jayashree, you asked is that how do you know whether your employee is engaged with you or not, right? Well, that knowledge fundamentally will always, whether it's the pandemic or not, will come from the output that the person delivers, right? The quality of the output, the energy with which it is delivered, the kind of add-ons that the person himself or herself brings onto the job, the enthusiasm that the person demonstrates. So it's always what the person does and how he does it at the workplace will be the measure of how or engaged or disengaged the person is. So I think that will continue to remain the same. Whatever Aditya said about those 4 things, I more or less have the same things to say, except that I would, instead of 4, put it into 2 buckets. One is genuine concern for the individual. And Aditya used the word genuine. And I think, being genuine is not very easy, right? Even when you are not genuine with your 5-year-old child, the child will notice it and pick it up. And he or she will pull at you and say, talk to me, or hear me, or listen to me, right? So genuineness is something that has to be, worked upon and concentrated, and it has to be demonstrated, especially at this time, asking the person, having those crucial conversations about how life is for them. A lot of people have told me that during this time, they are actually working longer hours, for delivering the same output. And why is that? Because they have to coordinate quite a bit. The methods and the processes of work have remained the same while everything else has changed. So they have to go through the same kind of routine, and it takes far longer because you're distributed all over the place. So that those many more telephone calls and emails and follow-up, which nobody likes to do, but it is consuming a lot of time in front of your family. And that is something that, so when you talk about genuine concern for the person, you address these issues and you bring them out and you ask and you say, okay, what is it that you and me can do together to kind of work around it and say, because I'm not happy making you work more, and I'm not happy that we are doing the job in the same manner that we have always been doing. So what is it that we could do? Let's talk, let's get together, have those crucial conversations. So I think genuine concern is for the person, number 1. And number 2, genuine concern for the job itself, because nothing engages a person more than a meaningful job. There is this age-old quotation which says that if you want a man to do a good job, give him a good job to do, right? And therefore today, even the milk delivery wala or the frontline healthcare wala is taking a lot of pride in his job because of the purpose that he can see now attached to it. Now, can we create that same sense of purpose, Third, and of course, it's a part of the job itself, is that during all of this, how are we ensuring that the person sees that the organization is actually investing in his growth and in his development? Once the person sees that an effort is being made by the organization to ensure that he grows, to ensure that he develops, to ensure that he progresses, right? That the effort itself, the fact of making that effort itself is a huge, what I would say, an engager, right? So genuine concern for the person, genuine concern for the job in terms of how it is done and what it can do for the person. I think having a lot of crucial conversations around these two areas is what will bring about better quality engagement, number one. And you can measure it by seeing, the quality of the output that the person is delivering, his enthusiasm, his energy levels, and the positivity that he radiates.
Great points, Ram. Again, two buckets: genuine concern for the person and genuine concern for the job purpose. Great point. And crucial conversations. I mean, that is really important to have those conversations, which I totally agree with you. David, your thoughts?
My first thought is you've got a very caring, smart panelist. I really appreciate what they say about the caring and people. New normal in such unnormal times. I think we're coming. I hope we're coming. I don't think we're necessarily going there. It's going to be choices of individuals and organizations. But I think we need to come to personal engagement and to work engagement. And yes, we want people to be connected to our organizations. Don't get me wrong. That's vital and important. But I still think about the individual. I'm 65, and so many of my friends have retired. And I don't think they realized when they retired, there was still much work to be done. Whether that was painting or golfing or looking after their grandchildren or whatever the case may be, they're still working, although we might not call it work. So William Kahn back in 1990, I go back to, he's the origin or grandfather of engagement. He used the term personal engagement. And somehow we attached engagement to the role of being an employee. And there's a validity to looking at the role of the employee. But I find a much stronger norm when I look at personal engagement and I look at work engagement. Because work engagement can go with me wherever I am. Personal engagement can go with me wherever I am and with whoever I am. And employee engagement is a little bit different. Just one quick aside. Please don't trust most of the statistics you read. There's lies, damn lies, and then there's statistics. Gallup often has very low numbers of engagement, and yet I will stand in front of 500 people and I will say, raise your hand if you're disengaged. I never get 350 people raising their hands. I'm lucky to get 2 or 3 people. And I know what you're thinking, David, someone in the audience doesn't want to raise their hand because someone else might see it. And I think that's a little bit true. But I think when you go talk to people working, they don't think so much about their engagement with the organization, although they might wear a baseball cap or they might care about the organization, don't get me wrong. They're often thinking about the people they're working with directly, the job they have, and what's going on. Just a quick example. My wife is extremely engaged in her work. She runs the COVID call center for my province and contact tracing. She works very long hours. She's very dedicated. But I don't think in some ways the organization she works for, she has troubles with the leadership. She has troubles with some of the decisions and things like that. And they may see her as disengaged because she's not going rah, rah, isn't this all wonderful? She challenges, she advocates, she voices, she holds what Ram says, those crucial conversations. And having an engaged employee is not always a wonderful thing. We try to pretend this is fantastic, but an engaged employee is going to say, hey, why are we doing this? Or what about this? Or how about Linda? Is she getting what she needs? And what's happening with Shri and those things? So it's a complex thing, and I'm not sure that there's any real static normal. It's very dynamic, and it changes.
Can I just, David, yeah. I really like the point that you made, and I'm going to just be, I just want to kind of make a point out there, which, one of the organizations that I worked and the founders, he's now a multi-billionaire. One of the founders used to say, organizations really have two types of employees. One who are who pay rent, right? So they are renters, and the others are owners, right? And he keeps talking about the fact that we need owners. They may be vocal, they may fight, they may push, but they're doing it because they own. They come from a space, and I would say that's deep engagement. About kind of giving a hang about something is a real deep engagement, and it may not be. And you're right, it may not be the organization or individuals, but it could be closer to the purpose. Maybe the purpose kind of resonates to an extent where that may be the case, right? Because today, in many professions, you see people transcend organizations, right? I look at the IT industry in India, and I was having a chat before the lockdown with somebody who just spent a year and wanted to move on. And he said, look, I've given this organization three releases. Now, I'm going to take this skill set somewhere else and help another organization. And he was being exceptionally genuine about it. So I think, for me, when I think about engagement, that ownership is strong correlation towards engagement.
Yeah, that's great. I think the ownership. So I think ownership, the work engagement, what David talked about versus the individual personal engagement versus the work engagement. And the work engagement is really, really crucial. So how has the workforce management has changed, which can impact the employee engagement during this time? Has it changed?
I think workforce management has changed dramatically.
Yes.
It's one where now I tend to lock myself in a room and spend 12 hours and hope that I'm doing a great job of managing a lot of stuff. But for one thing, it has changed.
So how is that adding to the employee engagement? Because the workforce management has changed. How does it impact employee engagement?
Yeah, I think two or three things.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, and I was going to quote Ram. Ram made a point earlier where lots of people are generally spending a lot of hours doing a lot of stuff which is not necessarily sexy, right? It's mundane activity, repeated coordination, all of that stuff. And add to that complexity, in many cases, you're doing household works, chores, you're sharing your bandwidth with your children who are schooling from home, and that kind of adds another layer of complexity. You are really juggling things. I think there are 2 points that really stand out. One is genuine empathy. Can individuals, and I won't say organizations, because organizations are really heartless souls, right? At the core. But genuine individuals, managers, leaders show empathy because, the realization that, you may be in a place where you may have a little bit more support and you may have a group of people who may not. And you have to then look at the world from that perspective. And I'm going to give you, we did a survey to ask how many people were ready to come back to office. And this is a survey that we've done thrice already. We did it earlier, we did another one, and we did one as we were thinking about opening up our offices. It was quite interesting. You had a large percentage, almost 20% of people who said, look, we want to come back to office. And about 80% of the people said, we would not like to work in office more than 2 to 3 days in a week. So you had a split group, and then you double click on the folks who wanted to come back to office. You realized all of their reasons were exceptionally honorable. right? They were saying, look, we are staying in a shared apartment, shared guest houses, or shared PGs, and we don't have the adequate infrastructure. I need to go out and get stuff done. I can't work from home. I think, we all start thinking of the world from our own eyes, and that empathy is hugely important in this environment, to start reflecting and understanding how others are also living their life. I had someone who was deeply upset about the fact that she had frequent electricity cuts in her apartment complex. She said, "Look, I'm not being as effective as I want to be, and I'm letting myself down in front of all of my peers." So it is the whole sense of empathy, sense of safety, I think, is an overrider for me. And in this environment, you asked the question, what can we do more of? I think all of us need to bite our tongue more often, or lip more often, and be a lot more empathetic.
Yeah. So empathy is the need of the hour, especially to manage the workforce and to understand genuine concern that keeps coming back, right?
It's now a need of six months, actually.
It's a need. It is that. David, Ram, want to go?
Yeah, I actually completely agree with what Aditya has said, and genuine concern is something that I touched upon earlier. This whole idea about ownership and engagement. Now, somehow from my experience, and we work with a lot of Indian entrepreneurs, people who built large businesses in this space, and all of them, all these people want employees to demonstrate ownership, right? And I keep telling them that, you're asking for something which is basically, it is at variance with each other. If you want ownership, why are you treating people as employees? You should treat them as owners, right? Or co-owners, right? Which you don't do in your manner, because you don't answer that simple question around ownership, which the employee has, right? Which is, what is in it for me, right? In this, if I do this the way you want me to do it, or better than what you are expecting, etc., 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 what's in it for me? The answer from the owner is never ownership, right? It's never that. And it's not just about stock options or things like that. Ownership is a very deep level of attachment, which is very difficult to generate. Some people are naturally inclined to take ownership of whatever they do, right? And they demonstrate it, right? But they don't do it because the ownership has been given to them, or they have been made co-owners. They are designed like that, they are built like that, and their nature is like that. With the others, I think, instead of expecting ownership and that deep level, this thing, if they just start enjoying what they are doing, if they are fully involved in mind and spirit, if they are given the space to, ask questions, seek clarifications, make changes, etc., etc., come out with whatever they think is not right and how best it could be done. And in all of that, if at least we give them that space, right, the engagement will increase tremendously. For it to reach a level of ownership, I think, it is the owners, for them to take that initiative to say, look, I don't look at you as an employee, I look at you as a co-owner, right? So let's now understand that this is what is at stake is not just something that is important to me and valuable to me, but it's for all of us. Now, when that kind of an approach is not only said, but stated, demonstrated, believed in, and in everything that the organization does, it's not very easy to do that. And many owners find it very, very difficult. They want ownership, but are not willing to part with their own ownership from their side. And therefore, this is something that the employee picks up very, very quickly. And then therefore, it becomes a cause of disengagement, because you say that you want me to behave as an owner, but you actually don't believe in it yourself. And it is evident from the way you conduct yourself.
Okay, so great point. Organizations need to treat employees as co-owners, so that way you can get the ownership and the engagement from the employees. David, your thoughts?
Very similar. Empathy, ownership, very powerful experiences for people. I think I'll add one word to it. Education. I just don't think we did much in the field of employee engagement. I'm thinking of the whole field since 1990 on. We didn't do enough to educate people about engagement and what it means and what is the benefit for their well-being and for contributions and what are the things that they can do on a daily basis and with each other. We seemed so concerned with measuring and how we stacked up to baselines. You know, the academics have reduced engagement, work engagement. They use a 17 questions called the Utrecht Work Engagement Survey. Mm-hmm. And then other academics got involved in it and they reduced it to a 3-question work engagement survey. I don't know in India, but say in North America, many companies and organizations spend far too much money measuring and not enough money educating. It's good to have a measure. I like to see that what I do makes a difference. And I don't trust myself sometimes because I want to see certain things that's actually going. So I like to get a measure from that. But I would like to see more education. And I think, I don't know, but I think we're going to be forced into a time in many places around the world of what I'm going to call frugal engagement and frugal innovation. And it's going to be less about money on surveys and other things and what can we do at low cost or no cost. And you know, empathy doesn't cost a lot of money. Education can cost some money, but it also can be very informal and take place between people. And coming back to Ram, having crucial conversations with employee to employee and employee to family, and noticing those things aren't. I think we're going to move to a time very, very rapidly that's going to require even more disruption in how we approach work and engagement.
Right. So before, there are a lot of questions coming on the chat and the Q&A here. Just before I get onto it, a quick brief from all of you on what is the disruption you're seeing in the employee engagement in the new normal? What is the disruption you're seeing?
Let's go in reverse order just to change things up. I was interested in the size of the coronavirus. Like I could see measurements of it, but I don't have a scientific background to understand virology. One analogy I saw was it's 1/10,000th the size of a grain of sand. And something that small has made so much change around the globe. I think it's demonstrating to us that small can be the new significant when it's attached to the significant. That things that we do that we think are small may not be small at all. And things that we do that I think are big and large and bold and really effective may have very little meaning for anyone.
Yep. Ram?
Yeah, no, the disruption around us is evident. And the fact that, you know, the world as we knew it is gone, finished, over. It's not going to come back, even when the virus, hopefully whenever, is gone. You know, things are not. But I think that there are a lot of positives, you know, that this disruption is bringing about. One is, of course, far greater efficiency in doing things. Number two, much greater appreciation of talent. Number three, everybody understanding the need to invest in people, to really address emotional issues, to develop genuine empathy, and to do all of that. So I think, you know, that there are a lot of lessons that we are learning in a very, very fast manner about how the new world order would look like. So, you know, I'm seeing a lot of positives that are emerging. You know, suddenly you find housing societies completely changing the way they service their people. You find a lot of civic sense amongst people, you know, which in India was always a very major issue. You know, you see a lot of empowerment. I mean, very recently, I changed my broadband from somebody to Airtel. And it just took one guy 20 minutes of time to set up my connection. He had a handheld and everything was there. All he wanted from me was my Aadhaar card, right? And he took a look at it, and then standing there, because he was not allowed upstairs to my flat, I had to go down and meet him, and standing there, just the two, and I asked him to sit down, and he said, "Not needed, sir. I'm sitting on my bike all day, so I'd rather prefer to stretch." And with a handheld, he did everything that otherwise would have required for me to travel to an office, to fill up forms, to make photocopies, to give signatures, to pay money, to do whatever you want, right? So that guy was very empowered, and just looking at him, I could see that he was a truly engaged employee, because he had been given a process that was enabling him to do his job efficiently. He was meeting and satisfying customers, which was again a source of great satisfaction to him. His organization had built everything to make his job as easy and simple and efficient as possible, right? And he was empowered. Now, the more we change work processes to bring about these things, the more I think employees will appreciate, and once they appreciate, they will respond. So I think there is a lot of learning in this disruption as well.
Learning in the disruption. Aditya, your quick thoughts on that?
Look, I think really, really valid points, both. I think the change that we're going to see around us is going to be multifold. It's going to be across the way we work, and that we are seeing, there's a lot more digitization, lot more focus on productivity, there's a saying that, it takes a village to raise a child. It's a little bit like everybody rallying around individuals who are actually your frontline folks. So you're seeing a lot more change in the work pattern that's happening. And with the change in the work pattern, you're seeing a huge amount of digitizations, companies, even the companies who are very traditional in nature today realize that if they have to reach customers at any scale, they need to kind of very actively digitize. So this is going to do a lot of that. In the financial services, payments has changed completely. The way goods are delivered, civic sense. So, the contours of work are changing quite significantly, and will continue to change. The second is the workplace, right? So today, and I wrote an article in LinkedIn a couple of weeks back. And when I look at the workplace, I was just, that article started from a view saying, what is the workplace of the future going to look like? We have offices, but work's getting done at home. If work is getting done at home, what's the role of an office? Is it a social hub? Is it a hub that you go and meet people? And the big question out here is companies who pride themselves on culture and in terms of value systems and all of that, rely heavily on artifacts and rituals to just embed that in people. Now, as you get new employees coming in, how do you do that? They're all sitting at home. You change a company, your bedroom doesn't change if that's the thing, or a study doesn't change. You're just kind of maybe replacing one laptop with another one, right? So how do you do that? And hence the role of the office in the future could be very, very different than what we've envisaged thus far. And then finally, if I look at the workforce, right, and Ram made a point around talent. But if I kind of look at the workforce, the nature of workforce is changing so much. We've all, across the last 20 years, we've all been very input oriented. We have a clause which says you will work 9 hours or 8 hours, 8.5, 12 hours. You will get so many days of leave. This is what's going to happen. It really doesn't matter anymore. So I think this change is going to be huge. And there are real commercial elements of it, right? Once you, and this is the problem, right? Organizations, leave aside organization, customer taste that levels of productivity, they are not going to be satisfied going back into old ways of working, right? Okay. So that implication will cut across work, workforce, and workplace so much. And I think it's not going to change. I think this new normal, maybe it will get muted a little bit, but this new normal is going to stay. And I'll give you a real example. I have two of my very senior colleagues who are working out of their hometown, sitting, one is in Himachal, one is down south. and they're not planning to come back to Gurgaon anytime soon. So you are seeing, including one person has said, like, my child is anyways online in school. I'm going to start homeschooling that person. So there are huge changes happening around us. We've got to just reflect on it. Some of it is going to stick more, but the change is there.
Yeah. Great, Aditya. I mean, I read your LinkedIn article and that raised a lot of questions, and that's how I reached you also, and then with that article on change on the work, the workforce, the workplace, the questions you raised. So let us now go take some questions from the audience. We have about 10 minutes, and Sabah, can you get the questions from the audience? Sabah, are you there? Okay.
Jayashree, so we would, I'd like the audience itself to, like, unmute themselves and ask the questions so we can see their faces also. It'll be great.
Yeah, okay. So should we want to, anyway, who wants to go first from the audience? I can see a lot of questions, so should I call out some names? If I see the questions here, then maybe they can. Lekha? Lekha? Okay. Do you have, okay, maybe someone can come.
Hello.
Yeah, Linda. So, yes. Yeah, please go ahead.
Yes. So, in my experience working with the employees as an employee engagement professional in the healthcare industry, I've noticed that the subject of empathy was addressed, and my question to the panelists is, how do you promote empathy at the top management level? I mean, it's easy for an HR to relate to empathy, but very often that empathy is not really seen at a level higher than that. And then partly because the HR sort of pushes on the views, or the HR is the go-between between the top management and the employees. So how is it that sort of the empathy can flow all the way from the top to the employees without the HR sort of getting the bad press, so to speak? Because what I realize nowadays is that HR tends to get a lot of bad press because they kind of voice the opinions or the policies of the top management.
Okay. Who wants to take the question?
Linda, I think you've raised a genuine and a real concern. Is that the all this talk about empathy is good, but how do you get the top management as a group to demonstrate empathy in how they deal with their people? I think the answer lies in what David talked about earlier, which is a lot of education around this entire topic. Top managers, many of them bring their own distinctive styles, and some are domineering and some are different, so getting them together to continuously understand these aspects and to help them understand and believe that empathy causes engagement, and engagement is actually good for you, so therefore understanding and making them appreciate through a structured and continuous intervention with top management is something that HR will have to initiate. You will have to take them together. You'll have to bring them out. There'll be lots of issues. A lot of people will find it very difficult to do it because they are not made that way, etc., right? But I think there's no easy way out, to my view, right? So getting them together, educating them, demonstrating to them the benefits, and teaching them and training them on how to do it is something that will have to be done.
Thank you, sir.
I'd like to just add to a moment is to have empathy for senior leadership, to understand their perspective.
Somebody, can you?
There's an old definition of persuasion. If you want to persuade people, show the immediate relevance and value of what you are saying in terms of meeting their needs and values. And if it doesn't meet their needs and values, you're not going to get an empathic senior leadership. We have neighbors to the south that have a president that doesn't appear to have too much empathy, and I wouldn't want to be the HR person to try and change that person. And then you have to start looking at what you're doing and how you're going. There are lots of senior leaders who get very far in their organizations and owners who get very far in their organizations without those elements. But there are lots of other organizations that do. As I started off, there is no India in my mind. There are many Indias. There is no organization. There are many organizations. And we need to look at the decisions we make about where we work and how we work and the influence that we can have while being realistic of our economic needs.
I think, maybe one more point I really like the analogy, and David, you're absolutely right. If you've got a leader who's spent 25, 30 years, being the alpha male in the pack or alpha woman in the pack, displaying a certain behavior, changing that behavior with data is, you'll have zero success out there. I think a lot of it is about starting. I agree. Education is one. You start showing the light a little bit. I think it's an experiential journey also, and you got to realize that somebody who is non-empathetic will not start being empathetic day one. It's going to take time. It's going to take time. It's going to take a lot of effort out there. It's a little bit akin to playing golf, right? So you start by saying keep your back straight, bend your knees, and now go for the swing. And over a period of time, it just kind of builds into muscle memory, and you start using it a lot more. And it is like, I'd kind of say, for me personally, and I can talk about myself out here, for me personally, empathy is, Gallup has a strength finder profile. For me, empathy is my last strength or weakness or whatever you want to call it, right? So it doesn't come naturally to me. Now, over the years, I have conditioned myself to know that my first response to a situation is not going to be empathetic. I may try to believe that that's going to change, but I know it. So I have to almost bite my tongue more often than not and say, hey, you know what? This is your first response, Aditya. You got to change that, right? Think about it. And that pause gives me enough time to get my back straight and get my knees bent a little bit for the swing, right? So it's not going to happen overnight. Education is a very important component, and getting people to see the alternate reality could potentially be more powerful than data. So Linda, actually a very good question.
Okay, so next question from Lekha. Oh, Chakrada, go ahead. I will read that next. Chakrada, go ahead.
Great. Jayashree, thank you very much for beautiful panel. David, Ram and Aditya, I think if any of the senior management CXOs are listening to you, they should be shivering. They have to shiver because you're defining a new type of organization. As you, all three of you were speaking, what was coming to my mind was you're defining what is called teal organizations. So two or three aspects of teal I would like to reiterate and ask for your comments whether those things are important. One for me is that there's a certain level of group intelligence that is required. That is, the groups have stormed, normed, and all of that, and they're now behaving intelligently without external stimulus, so to speak. The other is I'm a little bit in favor of a leadership that is changing all the time. Something like what Ricardo Semler did in Semco. And the third thing, which I've been trying to do last couple of years, but not been very successful, but I've been getting the feedback that it's important, is that organizations need feedback from external stakeholders who are not invested in the organization itself. So these are 3 points I would like the panelists' opinion. If these 3 are important, I think the way leadership behaves, the way shareholders are taken care of, the way stakeholders are managed, all of that would change. I mean, you have already alluded to how the social and the work processes have to change, but I feel that a lot more would change if my 3 premises are acceptable to all of you. Thank you.
Who wants to take that?
That was not a question. That was a booklet. and honestly, kind of touching through all of it to give you a real clear answer. It's going to be tough, right? I think a lot of it is fringe, right? Ricardo Semler talks about his organization. It's a fringe, it fits outside the norm in terms of what he's. I think if you've got to be real and honest to ourselves, we've got to think about practical solutions for practical organizations, and some of it is you're right. It's going to you're going to have, in some cases you will get external feedback. In some cases you're going to look at surveys. In some cases you're going to get that poor man standing in front telling you his story. I genuinely don't believe there's one size that fits all in this kind of a situation. It's going to be a array of tools that you will use to drive the point within the organization, and you will see. It's in some cases you will take stories which are more powerful, right? Stories conjure such powerful images, and you will do that. So I don't know if I'm answering your question, Chakrathar, but I'm attempting.
I have just one point to make, Chakrathar. Is that I have strongly advocated and encouraged that the top leaders, no matter how successful they are or how well they're delivering, I have always advocated coaching for the top leadership. With so it's a large investment that has to be made, and a lot of people think that they don't need it. But the organization makes sure, because it's lonely out there. The more senior you are, the less number of people can you open yourself to and talk about, etc., bring out, debate issues, etc. So you need that one person next to you with whom maybe once a month you have an open conversation which has no threat in it, right? And that coach is able to ask a lot of questions. He doesn't provide answers, but all he does is ask questions and help the man who's already very good become even better. And that is when some of these rough edges start getting smoothed out. So as a process, if an organization decides that coaching is a must for their top level, for their top managers, and that everybody, irrespective of who they are, where they are, they have to take it and then do it, I think it pays a lot of results in terms of getting top managers to put themselves in front of a mirror and get genuine and real feedback.
Can I add just one point to that? With everybody, so many people who had to go to work from home without a choice, and it just happened instantly, we have seen a growth of self-leadership, whether it's acknowledged or whatever, at a phenomenal level. You just watch on a Zoom call. I was watching Ram at one point in time. There was someone off to the right of you, Ram, and you had to kind of say, not just right now, just a moment or whatever. And we have people doing that at a much bigger scale about their what's going on in their home, where they're working, how they're working. I think the possibility is that we really start to experience that we don't work for an organization, we work with an organization. And when leaders understand that employees see their relationship as being with the organization, not for the organization, leaders are going to have to get with it too. Because to just try and decree and force people to do things will not be as tenable with many, many people who have experienced self-leadership at a level that we thought we would never see.
Thank you all.
Jayashree, may I speak now?
Yes. Yeah, Lekha. Please.
Okay, thank you. I was a little stuck for a little while. But David, Ram, Aditya, I think you make an absolutely phenomenal panel. And congratulations to Jayashree and Sabha of DisruptHR for bringing you together. My question is this: would individual styles, career change, the stage of life that you're in, personality, and maybe age cohort, would this not differently impact the expectation as well as the exhibition of engagement? You know, because when you look at any organization today, and one of you is a practitioner, one a consultant, and one probably an academic, it does mean that you would be looking at things completely differently from your own life stages about what engagement would be. Would that not reflect in the organization per se?
So let me start, and I think Ram or David can add to it. In terms of the fundamental building blocks of engagement, I don't think so, right? I think the fundamental building blocks remain pretty similar. It's a more human thing, right? You want to get connected, you want to kind of see purpose, you want to kind of, I think the fundamental building blocks won't change, Lekha, but what the magnitude in which how people respond may alter. You know, some people may be so self-driven that they don't need purpose, and they may not require you to spend that much effort, time, energy on that. And you know, when I talked about my formula for engagement, and I'm plagiarizing it completely. So when I was talking about my formula of engagement, the first one is about knowing that individual, right? To connect with someone, you got to know, you got to understand that person at an individual level, and that's how it works. And this is also one of the reasons why I believe most of the engagement surveys are quite bunkum, right? Because they just averages so much that what they present is really far away from the reality of what's actually happening in the organization. If you've got to know how a person is feeling, many times it's just about sitting with that person and talking to the person, you'll kind of get to know that. So I don't think the fundamental building blocks differ, but I think the intensity or the magnitude of those building blocks may vary from individual to individual, depending on all of those things that you said. You know, what you know, in terms of his
life stage
that person may be, in terms of age, in terms of career, and all of that.
Personality as well. That's true.
Could be, absolutely, could be. But those building blocks don't change.
Mm-hmm. Okay. David, what would you say?
This is kind of, Jennifer Deal wrote a book called Retiring the Generation Gap, and she said that the generations were more similar than different. It's just the expression of how it comes forth that did a big difference. But I'm in North America right now, and there's a whole movement about Black Lives Matter, and we've just had a number of sports teams. These are employees of organizations, even though they're athletes, who yesterday decided not to perform. They said what was going on within culture was more important than sport. When you see that, and they are role models for so many people of so many ages, it's changing that workplace dynamic so much, and around ages. So absolutely, the sensitivity and the uniqueness of people and being empathic to what goes on is vital and important. But I'm also seeing a groundswell from individuals forming into groups who are shifting, not leadership per se, because everyone has self-leadership, but the power dynamics. And it's happening every minute. In Canada, one of our big sports is ice hockey, and many of the ice hockey teams in these playoffs are being called to task right now. Why have you not ceased operating as a team while this cultural issue is going on? It's way beyond my ability to almost even comprehend it, but I've never seen change like this. And some of it has been awful, and some of it has been enthralling and inspiring.
Thank you. I think that was a wonderful point that you raised, that, you know, outside of the organization, the cultural changes that could be occurring would influence the way in which engagement is seen within as well. Thank you so much for that. Yeah. Ram, would you like to add something?
No, I'm fine.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Jayashree. Thank you.
Thanks, Lekha. If the panel is okay, we'll just take one more question. I know we are 10 minutes after 6. The panel is okay. Can I take one more question from the audience? Okay.
Yes, please.
Yeah. So anybody who wants to go, ask the last question, and I'll make sure we take care of all the questions and get answers, even if it's not covered in the discussion. But anybody who wants to ask a question now? Anybody? Okay.
Yes. Could I go ahead with one more question?
Yeah, Linda, please.
Okay, so this is to all the panelists. Now we're looking at a paradigm shift in the way people work, in the way corporates work, in the way organizations as a whole work, all over the world. Now, we're not just talking country specific, we're talking globally. So could each of you give your predictions about the way HR, the role of HR as a whole and employee engagement specifically will play in the coming years?
Okay, let me get the ball rolling, and then folks can add on. I think the role of HR kind of gets really amplified quite a bit, and for multiple reasons, right? I think one would definitely be the work design. Do you have work which is meaningful? Do you have work that is scalable, and are you doing things that matter? You know, as organizations are going to continue to drive productivity and profitability and other things, it just, you need to have a finer mesh to look at work through multiple lenses. So I think work design becomes very important. Individual care becomes super important right now, right? So which is, how do you make sure that you're looking at employee safety, employee security, the mental health of employees who are working remotely, whom you can't touch base on an ongoing basis or more frequently. How are you kind of creating avenues for that more actively? So I think that safety security is paramount, and that becomes almost like par for the course. I think the third element is the contact and connect. Can you create forums beyond just work? Can you create aspects where you can connect a lot more differently? And in the olden days, it was about parties and stuff, but now it's kind of a little different, right? It's about, can you connect with folks to understand what real problems are, what real issues are, and deal with those issues? Because you won't have people screaming and shouting anymore. They will just literally move away in this kind of environment. So I think, fourth point, I think employee experience now becomes even more important. It was important, it's been playing a larger role. We've got to start understanding employees at a level n is equal to 1, and that employee experience will take a precedence over form, functionality, and other things. It has to come together now. So I think these are the 4 things that I think of.
Yeah, I think, HR, I think there is far greater appreciation of the role that HR is playing at the strategy table. A lot of organizations have given seats to HR leaders at the strategy table, but they weren't really heard that much more, and their inputs were really not taken into consideration while formulating that strategy. So I think HR's importance has gone up simply because of what I think is a simple reality that has sunk in, that all business results are produced by people, right? So if a product is very successful, somebody designed that product, somebody made it, somebody marketed it, and they did a very, very good job. And that's the reason why the product is successful. So all 100% business results are produced by people. And this realization has dawned on a lot of business leaders. And therefore, to that extent, they are now listening more to HR. They are taking HR more seriously. Now, therefore, the responsibility is actually gone back to the HR professional, saying, how good are you? You know, and how much have you changed? How much of the new reality have you embraced? You know, how have you, what is your plan? What is your strategy? Which direction are you going to steer the organization? So I think, you know, while they will be given their place, Linda, I think the expectation from the HR professionals is going to be much, much more than ever before.
Yeah, just a couple things I'd like to say is, first off, what a pleasure it's been. Where I am right now, it's just coming after 7:30 in the morning. So what a fabulous way to start the day. I really appreciate what I've heard, and I wish I could hear from more of you and see your faces and see where you are and what's going on with that. I think HR has always had potentials and possibilities and realities. It's so easy to get lost in the minutia of detail that you have to have all the forms. And I see many people in HR, you know, trying to figure out return to works and what's happening. And so much is put upon them to look after things. And those things are vital and important. But let me go back just to the core for a moment, resources. In the academic field, the real focus is on work engagement. There's an approach called job demand resource model. And it really is, how does human resources help people gather and use and share the resources that they have to meet the demands of work? And when that occurs, not only do we have a high level of work engagement, we have a low level of burnout. So my plea to people in HR is, yes, I know there's so many things you have to attend to. There's so many things that you need to do, but always leave a little bit of time and energy for your core. You're called human resources. Ensure you do what you can to build those resources, help people meet the demands, stay engaged, and lessen stress and burnout.
Okay, thank you. Sabah?
Yeah, so like if the panelists are okay, we can take one more question. It's from Nupur. She says the benefits of employee engagement.
Sorry.
Yeah, so is it okay if we take another question?
I need to step out. I
okay.
have something else, but David, Ram, thank you so much. I really enjoyed our conversation. Jayashree, thank you for putting this together. I'm really sorry I have to step out.
Thank you, Aditya.
Thank you.
I know
Thanks,
you're
Aditya.
traveling. I know you're traveling, and it's thank you so much for taking the time to be here. And it was wonderful having you here and all the discussions. And I hope to be in touch with you for more.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
David. Thanks, Ram. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Sabah, you can go.
Yes. So Nupur's question is, like, the benefits of employee engagement have been established. However, little has been said about its potential as a burnout risk factor, with so many employees who are overworked and trying to save their jobs during the...
Sabah, you've gone mute.
Sabah?
Sorry. Yeah. So her question is, the benefits of employee engagement have been established. However, little has been said about its potential as a burnout risk factor, with so many employees who are overworked and trying to save their job during the pandemic. How do you minimize the risk of employee engagement leading to the burnout in the current scenario?
That's a really good question. The research would suggest that people who are authentically engaged are less likely to burn out. Sometimes working hard doesn't mean that you're necessarily engaged and working countless hours and trying to meet every demand that you encounter. Sometimes to be engaged means to say, stop. I need to focus on what's important, and there's certain things I can't go. We had a panelist who had another demand, and he met that demand, and I appreciate that. That needs to occur within organizations, but generally, and each person has to see that for themselves, because academics always say more research is required, and I hate that, because it sounds like you just got to write another study, as opposed to the more research that is required is the research of each of us individually and in the teams and the groups we're in, to see does this make a difference? What happens along the way? Mindfulness is very close to engagement. And so to be mindful of the levels of stress that you're having knows that, gee, maybe I need to take 2 days away from this work, or I can't meet those demands, or I have to, as Ram said, have those crucial conversations with my workplace about what we're trying to achieve and what we're trying to do and what my role is in it. So highly engaged doesn't mean highly stressed necessarily.
Yeah, I completely agree with what David is saying. Actually, meaningful engagement reduces burnout. It reduces that because it makes you understand that the quantum of work is really not important. It is the quality and the pleasure that you derive from it. So I think when you're doing genuine engagement, you will actually reduce burnout amongst people, and you can promote that by your policies as well, forcing people to take time off, for example, right? Or continuously investing in processes which reduce things that cause stress, identifying things that cause stress, like too much of coordination, too many telephone calls, etc. All of these things, these are unnecessary things, and technology can give you a lot of solutions around it. So investing in those processes and supplementing your engagement efforts with the right policies, I think a combination of all of this will actually reduce burnout.
Thank you. So Jayashree, I think we'll
Yeah.
take the other questions offline.
Yeah. Thank you, David. Thank you, Ram, and for being here and making this wonderful, wonderful panel discussion. There were tons of things which we got from you, right from you, Aditya, from the 4 things he talked about, and the 2 buckets, Ram, you talked about, and David on those work engagement part of it and how it is different from the employee engagement. And it has been such a wonderful discussion, and I think we can go on. We can see there are more questions to be answered. And what I will do is I will take those from the chat window and have those answered from you. And thanks for taking out the time. I know, David, it's very early in the morning. Ram, I called you and you accepted immediately, and thanks for that, being part of it. And I thank Aditya, in spite of his travel tomorrow for work, he still took the time to be on our panel. And thank you so much. It has been wonderful. And I would like to have our conversations happening in LinkedIn and others as well, so that we can keep this momentum going on this topic, which is very, very important right now. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Nice pleasure being with all of you. Look forward to more interaction. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you all the participants and for making it such a wonderful session. And very soon we'll come with the next one on this series of Breaking the Rules, and we will see you soon there. Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye, everyone. Thank you.